My family didn't ask me to pay for my little sister's wedding. They handed me the bill like it was my place, $56,000. Every major contract in my name, every invoice sent to me. They wanted my name on every bill, but they did not want my name anywhere near the word family. Then her future mother-in-law smiled and called me just the janitor, while my parents sat there pretending they hadn't heard a thing. But the word that broke me was not janitor. It was just, and when my sister looked me in the eye and said, "Know your place, nobody," she thought I would swallow it, pay for the wedding, and disappear quietly through the service entrance. She didn't know the fine print was still on my side. I used to think being useful was the same as being loved. That night, sitting with a badge in my pocket and my sister's words still in my ears, I understood something ugly. They did not need me at the wedding. They needed my signature. Before we begin, tell me where you're listening from and what time it is where you are. Then stay with me, because the badge they handed me at Harlow Hall was only the first sign that my family had already erased me. I pulled my Rourke Facility Services van into the gravel side lot of Harlow Hall, 93 days before my little sister's wedding. That number matters. I did not know it yet, but it would matter more than the flowers, the seating chart, the band, or the fancy stone building glowing beside Lake Arthur. The venue looked like the kind of place people chose when they wanted photographs that made their life seem cleaner than it was. Old stone walls, tall windows, a wide front entrance dressed with planters and polished brass handles. Through the trees, the lake caught the late afternoon light and threw it back like everything there had been blessed. I noticed the side door first. Men like me usually do, not because we belong there, because we spent our lives knowing where the real work entered. I stepped out, locked the van, and felt my grandfather's old key ring shift in my palm. The metal tag was worn smooth around the edges, but the words were still there, building trust. I ran my thumb over them once before putting the keys in my coat pocket. My name is Elgin Rourke. I was 58 then, owner of Rourke Facility Services in Butler County, Pennsylvania. I had crews who cleaned medical offices, schools, banks, municipal buildings, and places like Harlow Hall after the guests went home and the music stopped. I knew buildings from the back hallways out. I knew where pipes sweated, where staff parked, where vendors unloaded, and where rich people liked to pretend no one had mopped before they arrived. That afternoon, though, I was not there as staff. I was there as Maribel's older brother, Maribel Rourke, my little sister. 34 years old, bright smile, soft voice when she wanted something, sharp one when she did not. She was marrying Rexford Vale, whose family had a country club circle and the kind of polished manners that made you check your shoes before you crossed a room. Rex stood near the main entrance in a navy blazer, one hand resting lightly on Maribel's back. His mother, Iva Vale, was already speaking to Roxanne Bell, the wedding planner, like she had hired the air around us. My parents were there too. Nadine, with her purse tucked under her arm. Orson with his hands in his jacket pockets, looking toward the lake like it was easier than looking at people. Roxanne came toward us, holding a tablet and a few temporary badges clipped to white lanyards. "Welcome, everyone," she said. "We'll do a quick walkthrough, then talk flow, load in, and family staging." She handed Maribel a badge. Bride. Rex got one too. Groom. Iva did not get a badge. She got a printed packet, thick enough to make her look important. Then Roxanne turned to me. "Here you go, Mr. Rourke." I looked down at the badge in my hand. Vendor contact. For a second, I honestly thought somebody had typed the wrong thing. I gave a small laugh. Not a happy one. More like the kind you use when you are giving people room to fix something without embarrassing themselves. "I think this one's wrong," I said. Roxanne's smile flickered. She checked her tablet, tapped once, then again. "I'm sorry," she said, lowering her voice. "This is what I have in the note. It says you'll coordinate vendor and service access." Behind her, Iva tilted her head like this was perfectly sensible. "Well, that does make sense," she said. "Elgin understands facility flow. Every event needs someone practical." The word practical landed with a soft thud. I looked at Maribel. That was all she had to do, really. Just look at Roxanne and say, "No, that's my brother." 7 simple words. Nothing dramatic, nothing rude. Instead, Maribel pressed her lips together, The way she did when she wanted me to stop making life difficult. "Elgin," she said, "don't make this weird. You know this stuff better than anyone." There it was, dressed up like a compliment. My sister had not corrected the label. She had polished it. Roxanne looked uncomfortable enough that I almost felt bad for her, which was a habit I should have broken years earlier. I glanced past Maribel to my mother. Nadine adjusted the strap of her purse. My father looked toward the water. Neither one said, "He is her brother." It is funny what silence can do in a family. It does not crash into you all at once. It settles. It takes a chair. It waits for you to pretend it is not there. I held the badge between my fingers, the plastic edge pressed into my thumb. I did not raise my voice. I did not hand it back. I did not embarrass Maribel in front of her future in-laws, because I had spent most of my life protecting my family from the consequences of what they said when other people were listening. So I folded the lanyard once and slipped the badge into my coat pocket. Maybe it was wedding stress, I told myself. Maybe Iva had used the wrong words. Maybe Maribel was nervous. A man can explain away a small cut for a long time if he does not want to admit someone is holding a knife. Roxanne cleared her throat and pointed toward the side of the building. "We'll start with vendor load-in over there, then circle back to the main entrance for the guest arrival experience." I looked at the service door. Then I looked at the front doors. Maribel took Rex's arm. Iva walked ahead with her packet. My parents followed without a word. I stood there for one extra breath. My grandfather's key tag in one pocket and that badge in the other. One said building trust. The other said vendor contact. And for the first time that day, I wondered something I should have asked much sooner. If this was where they put me before the wedding, where were they planning to put me when the room was full? The badge at Harlow Hall felt like the beginning when it happened. It was not. 6 months earlier, Maribel brought a glossy wedding brochure to our parents' kitchen table and smiled like she was asking for a blessing, not $56,000. It was a Sunday evening at the old split level in Butler County. My mother had made pot roast, the kind she always said tasted better the next day. Coffee sat in brown mugs. The table still had the same scratches from school projects, tax papers, birthday cakes, and arguments nobody ever finished. On the refrigerator were magnets from places my parents had never visited, holding up photos of Maribel. Maribel at graduation. Maribel at Easter. Maribel with Rex at some charity dinner where everyone looked expensive and uncomfortable. There were pictures with me in them too, if you counted the edges. A shoulder in a work shirt, a hand holding a cake knife, a face half turned away because I had probably just come in from a shift. Maribel placed the brochure on the table with both hands. "Isn't it beautiful?" she said. Harlow Hall looked expensive even on paper. Lake views, stone terrace, grand ballroom, bridal suite. Words people use when they want a day to look like it never touched ordinary life. My father, Orson, leaned closer. "That's something," he said. My mother smiled like Maribel had already walked down the aisle. "Oh, honey, it's lovely." I waited. I knew my family. No one brought a brochure that polished a Sunday dinner, unless the brochure had a bill hiding behind it. Maribel sat beside me and turned the pages slowly. "Rex's family has certain expectations," she said. "Not in a bad way. They just know how these things are supposed to be done." That was the first warning. The second was when she said Iva Vale had already spoken to a planner. Then came the venue deposit, catering hold, photographer, florals, music, signage, a wedding website. A few upgrades that Iva said were standard for this kind of event. Maribel never said the total at once. She walked us toward it like a nurse walking someone toward bad news. Finally, she touched the edge of the brochure and said, "We were hoping the family could help." Family. In our house, that word had a way of entering the room wearing everyone's face but mine. I looked from Maribel to my parents. How much help? She hesitated just long enough to make it worse. 56,000, she said. Not all at once. It's deposits and scheduled payments. My coffee had gone lukewarm. I set the mug down carefully. "The first 56,000, I said. Maribel's smile tightened. "Elgin, don't say it like that." "How should I say it?" "Like you're happy for me." That one landed quietly, not loud, not cruel enough for anyone to call it cruel. just enough to put me in my place before the wedding even had one. My mother reached over and touched my wrist. "You've always been good with money, Elgin." My father leaned back in his chair and gave me the look he used when he wanted a matter settled without admitting he was asking for something. "You don't have a family of your own," he said. "This is what family does." He did not shout. That almost made it worse. He said it like my life simply had fewer places for love to go, fewer needs, fewer plans worth protecting. I looked at Maribel then, and I did not see the woman with the glossy brochure. I saw the little girl who used to wait for me by the back door when I came home from cleaning offices after midnight. I saw school supplies, used tires, rent when she was short, a laptop she said she would pay me back for and never did. Not because I kept a ledger on her, because some debts do not feel like debts until the person who owes them starts acting like you were born to pay. Part of me knew $56,000 was too much. Another part of me felt ashamed for thinking it. A good brother helps, right? A good son does not make his mother worry. A good man does not count pennies when his sister is getting married. That was the old trap. Make me prove I was not selfish before I was allowed to ask if something was fair. I sat back and folded my hands. "I'll help," I said. Maribel let out a breath. My mother closed her eyes for a second, relieved. My father nodded like he had expected the answer all along. Then I added, "But I'm paying the vendors directly." The room changed. Not much, just enough. Maribel blinked. "What do you mean?" "I mean I'm not handing anyone cash. I'm not writing a blank check. If my money is going toward deposits, I'll sign the vendor agreements and pay through proper records." "Elgin," my mother said softly, "do we really need to make it so businesslike?" "Yes," I said, "we do." Maribel's face cooled. "You don't trust me?" "I trust paperwork," I said. "That's different." No one asked what I had planned for that money. No one asked what I would delay, what truck I would not replace, what repair I would push back at the office. The gift had already become expected. My condition was the only part they found uncomfortable. The next business morning, I called Maura Kessler, my CPA and attorney. Maura had been keeping my company out of avoidable trouble for 15 years. When I explained it, she sighed in that way practical people do when they hear family and money in the same sentence. "Elgin," she said, "if you are paying, you sign. If you sign, you keep copies. Family is not a filing system." So that is what I did. The first contract came from Harlow Hall. I printed it at my office and read every page before signing, not because I planned to hurt anyone, because I had built my life by reading what other people skipped. Near the bottom, under responsible party, I wrote my name, Elgin Rourke. Then I signed beneath it. At the time, I thought I was protecting Maribel from confusion, my company from sloppy records, and my family from embarrassment. I did not yet understand I was protecting myself from being erased. The contracts had my name on them because I knew better than to leave money floating around without paper under it. That lesson did not come from business school. I never made it that far. I was 22 the first time my family learned I could step out of my own life during an emergency and still keep the lights on for everyone else. Back then, I was taking evening classes at the community college. Nothing fancy. Business management, basic accounting, the kind of courses a man takes when he does not have a dream big enough to brag about, but still has a plan. I worked part-time during the day and studied at night, telling myself I was building a quiet future. Then my father got hurt at the warehouse. One phone call, and the house changed shape. The mortgage still came due. The utility bills still arrived. My mother's cafeteria paycheck could not stretch far enough. Maribel was younger, still the surprise daughter. Everyone treated like a blessing. I was the youngest son, not the youngest child, and somehow that made me old enough to understand what she was protected from. I told myself I was taking one semester off. Just one. That is how a lot of permanent things begin in a family. They arrive wearing temporary clothes. I picked up night cleaning work because it paid better than people thought and asked fewer questions than office jobs did. I cleaned medical buildings after the last patient left. I stripped wax from school hallways while the vending machines hummed. I emptied trash cans in offices where men not much older than me had their names on doors. I was tired most mornings, but the house stayed standing. My mother called me her steady one. My father said, "You're a good son, Elgin." I lived on those words for longer than I should have. When you are young, gratitude can feel like love if you are hungry enough for it. One semester became a year became whatever this was. My textbooks went into a box in the basement. Maribel's school pictures went up the wall. That was the rhythm. Her life moved forward. Mine learned to move around it. I bought her school supplies when my parents were short. Later, I helped with a used car because she needed a safe way to get to class. Then rent, then a phone bill, then some small thing that could not wait until Friday. Maribel was not evil as a child. I need to say that plainly. She was sheltered, and I helped build the shelter. The trouble was, after a while, nobody sees the roof. They just complain when it leaks. On my parents' wall, Maribel grew up in frames. Homecoming, graduation, engagement. I showed up in the background when I showed up at all. One picture had me near the edge, still in a Navy work shirt, my hair damp from a job site. I remembered that day. I had come straight from cleaning a medical office because Maribel wanted the whole family there. I was there, just not centered. Cleaning work taught me more than college ever got the chance to. I learned which clients paid late and smiled early. I learned which buildings needed kindness and which needed a firm contract. I learned that if a man opened doors before sunrise and locked them after midnight, people might never know his name, but they would notice if he stopped. I moved from night cleaner to crew lead to supervisor. Then I took 2 small accounts on my own. I bought one van, used, with a heater that worked only when it felt like being generous. Then another van. Then insurance, payroll, uniforms, keys, alarm codes. By the time Maribel met Rexford Vale, Work Facility Services had 38 employees and more responsibility than some people ever see on paper. We cleaned schools, churches, medical offices, banks, municipal buildings, and event spaces where guests complimented the shine without wondering who had been on their knees at 2 in the morning making it happen. Outside my family, people called me Mr. Rourke. Cody Harlan at Harlow Hall shook my hand like my work mattered. Wanda Pike, my night shift supervisor, called me boss, but never in a way that made me feel bigger than her. Wanda was 67 and could read a room faster than most people read a contract. I hired her after 2 companies told her she was too old for steady work. She ran my night crews better than men half her age. At home, though, the old label stayed. Elgin cleans buildings, my mother would say. Maribel once laughed at a barbecue and told Rex, he's basically a janitor, but he does okay. She did not say it like she was trying to wound me. That was part of the problem. She said it like the family had agreed on the size of me years ago, and no one needed to measure again. I was never ashamed of the word janitor. My grandfather Edwin had been a school custodian for 32 years. He carried a ring of keys on his belt, and you could hear him coming down a hallway like a little bell was warning the dark to behave. He used to say a key was not a small thing. A key meant somebody trusted you when the building was empty. When he died, I kept his old key tag, building trust. So no, the word janitor did not embarrass me. The word just did. Just a janitor. Just the steady one. Just Elgin. Just the man who would handle it. By the time Maribel asked for wedding help, my family did not have to wonder whether I would show up. They had built their habits around it. And I let them, because some part of me still believed one last big gift might finally make them see the man I had become. Not the kid who gave up a semester, not the worker in the corner of the family photo, her brother, their son, a man who had built something with hands they kept trying to shrink. I thought my family's old label was something I could survive. Then the Vale family learned it, polished it, and started using it like a place card at my sister's wedding. After I signed the wedding contracts, my name began fading from every planning message except the ones asking for payment. At first, Roxanne Bell copied me on everything. Menu options, table linen samples, floral sketches, photography timelines, floor plans with little rectangles showing bars, guest tables, and the dance floor. I did not care whether the napkins were ivory or pearl. I cared that I was included. Being copied on those emails told me I was still on the family side of the wedding. Then, little by little, the messages changed. I stopped seeing menu discussions, then seating drafts, then ceremony details. Then anything with words like welcome, host, family, or honor. But the invoices arrived without missing a step. I would be sitting at my desk at Work Facility Services, sorting payroll or reviewing supply costs, and a new wedding email would slide into my inbox. Harlow Hall balance update, floral installation upgrade, photography add-on, custom signage deposit, planner retainer, wedding website revision. Every message was clean and professional. Every total was clear. Every payment field carried my name. The subject line started saying things like Vail Wedding Package or Vail Family Signage. Then I would open the attachment and see bill to Elgin Rourke. That was the part that stuck with me. Their name was becoming the story. Mine was becoming the account. I called Maribel on a Tuesday afternoon after one of those emails came in. I remember it because I was standing near the office coffee machine, watching Wanda Pike tape a new schedule to the crew board. Maribel answered on the third ring, cheerful enough to make me feel guilty before I had even asked the question. "Hey, Elgin, everything okay?" I was wondering why I'm not seeing the planning emails anymore. There was a pause. Not long, just enough to tell me she had expected the question eventually. "Oh, we didn't want to overwhelm you with all the little stuff," she said. "You're better with the financial side anyway." The financial side. I looked through my office window at one of my crews loading supplies into a van. Buckets, floor pads, disinfectant, gloves, real things. Things that did not pretend to be prettier than they were. "I'm still part of the family, Maribel." "Of course you are. Don't be dramatic." That is a phrase people use when they want you to feel ashamed for noticing what they are doing. I asked about the family table and the photos. She said Iva was helping with that because the Vales knew how these things are supposed to flow. I almost laughed. Not because it was funny, because I had spent half my life making buildings flow before people with nicer shoes walked in and called it elegance. Over the next few weeks, Iva Vale's fingerprints showed up everywhere. Not literally. Iva was too careful for that. She worked through words. Tasteful, proper, tone, presentation, family image. She treated the wedding less like a marriage and more like a press release for the Vale name. The website draft changed to say the Vale family welcomed guests. A crest appeared on a mock-up for the entry sign. Maribel sounded thrilled every time Iva praised her. Nobody asked if my name belonged anywhere except the contracts. I told myself to let it go. That was one of my old habits, polished smooth from use. Let it go. Keep peace. Do not make a good day harder. Do not put your hurt in the center of the table. But another part of me had started keeping track. 93 days before the wedding, after the Harlow Hall walkthrough where Roxanne handed me the vendor contact badge, everyone drove down to Wexford for a planning dinner. I followed in my work van because I had come straight from the office and had no reason to pretend otherwise. The restaurant had a private room in the back, white tablecloths, heavy silverware, and soft lighting that made every insult feel like it had been approved by management. Maribel sat beside Rex. Iva sat at the head of the table without being asked. Vance Vale, Rex's father, folded his hands and looked like a man waiting for someone else to pick up the check. My parents sat together across from me. Roxanne opened her folder and began reviewing family staging. "We should clarify immediate family for the formal portraits," she said. "Elgin, would you be standing with the bride's side for the family photos?" Before I could answer, Iva gave a light little laugh. "Oh, I'm sorry," she said. "I thought Elgin was part of the facility side." The room paused. Iva turned her eyes toward me, calm and bright. "Isn't he just the janitor?" No one dropped a glass. No one gasped. That is not how these moments usually happen. Real cruelty often enters quietly, wearing good manners. Rex looked down at his water. Then he added, almost helping her, "I mean, Elgin does know the building side better than any of us." Iva smiled as if that settled it. "No offense. Of course. Every event needs good help." I looked at Maribel first. She was my sister, my little sister, the girl I had helped through every emergency she no longer remembered clearly. All she had to say was, "He's my brother." Instead, her cheeks colored, not with anger for me, but with embarrassment because of me. I looked at my mother. Nadine folded her napkin into a smaller square. I looked at my father. Orson cleared his throat and stared at the table. The silence did not surprise me. That was the part that hurt. Somewhere deep down, I had expected it and still hoped I was wrong. I set my hands flat on the table. Iva, I said evenly, the word janitor doesn't embarrass me. Her smile thinned. The word just does. No one answered. So I turned to Maribel. I kept my voice low because I wanted no one to say I had caused a scene. Am I your brother tonight? I asked. Or am I the help? The room held still around that question. It was not a speech. It was a door. And Maribel had one chance to walk through it. Maribel did not answer me right away. My question sat there between us, quiet and plain. Am I your brother tonight, or am I the help? She looked at me first, then at Iva Vale. After that, her eyes moved to Rex, as if she needed permission from the life she was trying to marry into. I could see the calculation pass across her face. Not numbers, something worse. Status. Approval. The room she wanted. The people she wanted to impress. Then she looked back at me, like I was the one making everything difficult. Elgin, she said, her voice soft enough to sound reasonable. You always do this. I kept my hands on the table. Do what? You make everything about respect. I almost laughed, but there was no humor left in me. I asked if I was your brother. Maribel's mouth tightened. She glanced toward the folded badge near my place setting, the one Roxanne had handed me at Harlow Hall. Vendor contact. I had taken it out of my coat earlier without thinking, and now it sat there like a little piece of plastic truth. Just know your place for one night, she said. The room went still around those words. I leaned back slightly. Not far, just enough to see her clearly. What place is that? She should have stopped. Any decent part of her should have caught the edge in her own voice and pulled back. But Iva Vale was watching. Rex was quiet. My parents were waiting for me to make it easy. Maribel gave a small smile. It was not kind. It was the kind people use when they want to pretend the cut was clean. Know your place, nobody. For a second, I did not feel angry. That surprised me. Anger would have been simpler. Anger gives a man somewhere to put his hands, something to say, a fire to stand inside. What I felt instead was a kind of empty space opening in my chest. Like a room I'd kept furnished for years had finally been cleared out. Nobody. Not brother. Not son. Not host. Not family. Just useful until I wanted a name. I looked at Rex first. He did not defend me. He did not even look ashamed. He stared at his water glass like the answer might be floating there. Iva's face stayed smooth, but I saw satisfaction in the corners of her mouth. Vance Vale shifted in his chair, irritated. Not by what had been said, but by the fact that it had made dinner uncomfortable. Then I turned to my parents. My mother's eyes were down. My father's fingers were wrapped around his glass. You heard her, I said. Nadine lifted her head just enough to whisper, Elgin, not here. Not, she didn't mean that. Not Maribel, apologize to your brother. Not, you are not nobody. Just not here. Orson cleared his throat. Let's all calm down. That was when I understood the shape of it. The problem, to them, was not that my sister had called me nobody. The problem was that I had allowed the room to notice. I stood up slowly. No chair scraped hard. No glass tipped. No speech came pouring out of me. I knew better than to hand them a scene they could use later. If I shouted, the story would become my temper. If I cursed, it would become my language. If I pointed at Iva, it would become my jealousy. So I picked up my coat. For 1 second, I left the badge on the table. Then I reached back and took it. I did not know exactly why. Not yet. Some part of me, the part that had signed contracts and kept copies, understood that pain was one thing and proof was another. Maribel said my name as I turned. Elgin. I stopped, but I did not look back. She did not say she was sorry, so I kept walking. The hallway outside the private room was narrow and warm, carrying the smell of garlic, wine sauce, and polished wood. A waitress passed me with a tray and gave me the quick professional smile people give strangers who look like they are holding themselves together by force. I made it through the front door and into the parking lot before I let my shoulders drop. The evening had cooled. My Rourke Facility Services van sat under a light pole near the edge of the lot, ordinary and square and honest. I unlocked it, climbed in, and closed the door. For a while, I just sat there, both hands on the steering wheel. The restaurant windows glowed behind me. Inside, they were probably already explaining me away. Too sensitive, embarrassed, overreacting, family misunderstanding. People like that never run out of soft words for hard cruelty. My phone started ringing. Maribel. I let it stop. Then Nadine. Then a text from Rex. You're making this worse than it needs to be. I set the phone face down on the passenger seat. That was the lowest part. Sitting there in that van, realizing I had spent so much of my life confusing being needed with being loved. $56,000. Every contract, every invoice, every favor from the time Maribel was young enough to call me when her car made a noise. And my father had looked at his water glass while his daughter called his son nobody. My hand moved into my coat pocket and found my grandfather's old key ring. The metal tag was warm from my hand. Building trust. I thought about Edwin Rourke walking school halls before sunrise with those keys at his belt. He used to tell me that people joked about the man with the mop until the day the doors were locked, the lights were out, and something needed fixing before morning. Those keys did not make me strong. They kept me from begging. Because that is what I almost did. I almost went back inside. I almost asked my family to remember me. I almost gave Maribel another chance to say what should have come naturally. But if I walked back in and pleaded for my place, I would be proving her right. I looked through the windshield at the warm windows and held Edwin's key tag in my fist. I did not know what I was going to do yet. I only knew I was not going back into that room as nobody. I could have started the van and driven home. That was the honest truth. I sat there with Edwin's key tag in my fist, the restaurant glowing behind me, and a part of me still tried to make the old bargain. Let Maribel have the wedding. Pay what you promised. Step back afterward. That was the kind of thinking that had kept my family comfortable for years. Absorb the insult. Keep the peace. Do not make the day about yourself. Do not make your mother cry. Do not make your father look ashamed. Do not make your sister face what she just said. My phone kept lighting up on the passenger seat. Maribel again. Then my mother. Then Rex. I did not touch it. For a few minutes, I stared through the windshield and tried to imagine letting the whole thing go forward. I could picture it. Harlow Hall, full of guests, the lake behind the windows, Maribel in white, the Vale family smiling in the photographs. Me somewhere out of sight, maybe near a side table, maybe introduced as the one who helped with the venue. If I spoke up, I would be the man who ruined his sister's wedding. If I stayed quiet, I would pay for the room where they buried me. That was where my mind was when my phone lit up again. This time, it was not a call. It was an email from Roxanne Bell. Subject: Draft Program Layout for Family Approval. I looked at it for a long second. Then, I picked up the phone. Maybe habit opened that email? Maybe training? Maybe the part of me that still checked details even when my heart was sitting in pieces on the floor. The attachment loaded slowly because the signal in that parking lot was poor. I watched the little circle spin until the first page appeared. The Vale family welcomes you to the wedding of Maribel Rourke and Rexford Vale. I read it twice. Not the Rourke and Vale families. Not Maribel and Rexford invite you. The Vale family welcomes you. There are sentences that do not look cruel until you realize what they leave out. I swiped to the next page. There was a section titled, "The Families Who Made This Day Possible." Iva and Vance had a polished photo from some charity dinner. My parents were listed beneath a smaller picture from Maribel's engagement party. Rex had his groom's note. Maribel had a short paragraph about love, grace, and new beginnings. My name was not there. Not as brother, not as contributor, not even as a line at the bottom. I sat very still. The engine was off, so the van held every sound. My breathing, a car door closing somewhere across the lot, faint laughter from the restaurant entrance. All of it felt too normal for what I was reading. I kept scrolling. At the very end of the file, below the layout notes, Roxanne had left something visible that I do not think she meant to send me. A production note, small font, plain as a receipt. Confirmed per Maribel and Mrs. Vale. Elgin Rourke to remain payment. Vendor contact. Do not list as host. I stared at that line until the words stopped being words and became a door closing. Confirmed per Maribel. Not misunderstood. Not wedding stress. Not Iva going too far without my sister knowing. Maribel had approved it. They had not forgotten my name. They had moved it. From family to billing, from brother to service contact, from the people being honored to the person quietly paying. The badge at Harlow Hall had not been a mistake. It had been the first printed copy of the truth. My thumb moved before the rest of me caught up. I opened the vendor portal from the email Roxanne had sent the week before. The login still worked because, of course, my access had not been removed from payments. The invoices were lined up in clean little rows. Custom Vale Crest welcome sign. Society page announcement design fee. Hospitality suite for Vale family guests. Floral backdrop for Vale family portraits. Wedding website revision. Hosted by the Vale family. Every charge had a due date. Every balance traced back to me. My name was good enough to authorize the money that made their name look generous. That was the second betrayal. The first was erasing me. The second was using my money to buy applause for the people doing it. I set the phone on the passenger seat, face up. The program proof glowed on the screen. Beside it, I opened the invoice summary in another window. One paper gave them the credit. One paper gave me the debt, and suddenly the hurt changed shape. It did not vanish. I want to be clear about that. I was still a man sitting alone in a work van after his sister called him nobody. But under the hurt, something steadier began to rise. Clarity. If I let that wedding happen, I was not being gracious. I was helping them lie. They could explain the dinner away if they wanted. Iva could say Janitor came out wrong. Maribel could say she was embarrassed and under pressure. My parents could say they froze, but paper does not freeze. Paper records what people are willing to say when they think nobody important will read it. The draft program, the production note, the invoices, the badge in my coat pocket. Together, they told the story without raising their voices. My question changed right there in the van. I stopped asking why they would not see me. I started asking what I was still allowing them to use. I picked up my phone again and opened the folder Maura Kessler had set up for the vendor contracts. Venue, catering, planner, florals, photography, music, website. Every major agreement scanned and saved, because Maura did not believe in trust without documentation, and by then neither did I. Outside, the restaurant lights stayed warm and pretty. People walked past my van without knowing anything had shifted. Inside that van, the man they had called nobody began looking for the line where his name still meant something. The first contract I opened was Harlow Hall. 42 pages on a phone screen is no pleasant thing to read in a dark parking lot, but I had read worse under worse circumstances. Insurance policies, service agreements, late payment clauses, vendor language that smiled on the first page and bit on the last. I sat in my van outside that Wexford restaurant, the keys quiet in my pocket, and enlarged the cancellation section with 2 fingers. Page 17. Written notice received more than 90 days prior to the event date may qualify for refund. According to schedule, subject to rebooking and administrative review. I read it once, then again. The wedding was 93 days away. 3 days. That was all the room I had. Because the weekend was coming and Monday was a holiday, I knew there could be no argument over when notice had been received. If I was going to act, it had to be that night. Not in the morning after everyone had called me selfish. Not after my mother cried. Not after Maribel found a way to turn nobody into "you misunderstood me." Tonight, before 11:59 p.m., I did not feel happy. That matters. I did not grin at the screen, like a man enjoying damage. I felt my breathing settle, the way it does when a noisy room finally goes quiet. Before I sent anything, I sat with the choice. If I canceled, I would become the brother who ruined the wedding. If I did nothing, I would become the man who paid to be erased from it. That was the real question. Not forgiveness, not revenge, not whether I loved Maribel. I did love her. That was the trouble. Love had been used as a handle on me for so long that everybody forgot I was still attached to it. I thought about the badge in my coat pocket, vendor contact. I thought about Maribel's voice. Know your place, nobody. I thought about the program note. Do not list as host. Then, I stopped wondering whether they would understand. I opened the Harlow Hall portal first. My hands were steady. That surprised me, but only for a moment. Work teaches a man to do what needs doing while his feelings wait in the truck. I typed the notice carefully. As sole responsible party, I am exercising the cancellation clause under Section 8. I added the contract date, event date, and account reference. I requested written confirmation of receipt and refund processing according to the agreement. Then I sent it. A confirmation number appeared. I saved the PDF. Then I moved to the caterer, then the florist, then photographer, planner, music, website and print vendor. For each one, I used the same calm language. No accusations, no family history, no speech about dignity. Just the clause, my name, the event date, the contract reference, and the request for confirmation. I forwarded every receipt to Mulra Kessler. At 11:41 p.m., the last notice was sent. The restaurant still glowed behind me. People were probably ordering dessert. Maybe Iva was smoothing the story. Maybe my parents were telling Maribel I just needed time. Nobody inside knew the wedding had already started coming apart in their inboxes. I leaned back in the driver's seat and looked at the phone in my hand. They had counted on my money, yes. But more than that, they had counted on my silence. They thought a man they called just the janitor would not read the fine print. I did not raise my voice. I raised the cancellation clause. I drove home after midnight and did not sleep much. By 5:30 the next morning, I was at the office. The lot was still dark. Wanda Pike's night crew was loading bags into the dumpster, and the smell of floor cleaner and burnt coffee hung in the break room. Wanda looked at me once and said, "Boss, you look like somebody finally put down a heavy box." "Maybe I did," I said. She did not pry. Good people know when silence is respect. At 8:12, Cody Harlan called from Harlow Hall. "Mr. Rourke," he said, "professional as always. We received your written cancellation before the deadline. Since you are the responsible party, we'll release the date administratively. I can hold it until noon before offering it to our waitlist. If it rebooks, your refund schedule looks cleaner." "Understood," I said. He paused. "I'm sorry it came to this." That was more kindness than my own family had managed. The other emails came one by one. Cancellation acknowledged. Refund processing pending. Final balance stopped. Planner agreement terminated. The money did not fly back all at once. Real life does not work that way. But the door had closed on future payments, and the unearned deposits had started their way back through the proper channels. Then my family found out. Maribel called 6 times. My mother left a voicemail. "Elgin, I know your feelings were hurt, but you need to be the bigger person." My father's message came after hers. "This is not the time to punish your sister." Rex texted, "You're embarrassing everyone." Maribel finally sent, "What did you do?" Not one message asked what had happened to me. Not one said, "I'm sorry she called you that." Not one said, "We should have defended you." They did not call to repair the wound. They called to restore the wedding. I let the phone sit on my desk while the office came alive around me. Crews checked keys in and out. A printer warmed up. Someone laughed near the supply closet. Life kept moving, which was strange and comforting at the same time. I did not answer each call. That was the old trap, defending myself sentence by sentence until everyone else felt better and nothing changed. I sent one message to the family thread. I was the bigger person for 40 years. Last night, I became a person with a boundary. Then I placed the phone face down. By noon, Harlow Hall was no longer safely theirs. The scheduled balances were stopped. Refunds were in process. The date was moving towards someone else's calendar. And my family was not asking whether I was hurt. They were asking how fast I could fix what I had done. That was when I understood the difference between breaking a family and breaking a pattern. I thought the contracts would make the truth plain enough. That was my mistake. Iva Vale did not build her life on truth. She built it on controlling the story. 2 days after the cancellations, I walked back into my parents' kitchen with a folder under my arm and found Iva already sitting at the table like she had called the meeting herself. The same table where Maribel had asked for the wedding money now held coffee cups, a box of tissues, and Iva's leather handbag. Maribel sat beside Rex, pale and stiff. Vance Vale stood near the counter with his arms folded. My mother looked like she had not slept well. My father stared at the folder in my hand as if it might accuse him before I opened it. On the wall behind them were the old family photos. Maribel's graduation, Maribel's engagement. One faded picture where I was barely visible near the edge, still in a work shirt. I did not sit. Iva began before anyone else could. "Elgin," she said, calm as a Sunday school teacher. "We are all adults here. You made your point, but it is time to stop punishing your sister." I looked at Maribel. She did not look back. Iva continued. "A wedding is emotional. People say things. You took one uncomfortable moment and turned it into a financial weapon." "One uncomfortable moment," I repeated. "Yes," she said. "And I think, if we are being honest, this touched something very personal in you." There it was, the turn. Iva was not going to defend the badge. She was not going to explain the program. She was going to make me the problem. "You have always felt overlooked," she said. "I can understand that. But Maribel deserves one day that is not about your resentment." My mother's hand moved toward the tissues. Then Iva looked at me with soft pity, the kind people use when they are sharpening something. "You do not have a family of your own, Elgin. That does not mean you get to control hers." That one found an old place in me. For a second, I felt 22 again, standing in that kitchen while everybody's need was treated like a fact and mine was treated like an inconvenience. Then Iva slid a printed email across the table. It was mine, a message I had sent Maura months earlier. "I want all contracts and approvals under my name, since I am the responsible party." Iva tapped it with one polished finger. "You planned this," she said. "You made sure every document gave you power. So the moment your feelings were hurt, you could take everything away." Maribel finally looked at me. "Is that true?" That question should have hurt less than it did. My father's face tightened before I even answered. My mother whispered, "Elgin." I wanted to explain. I wanted to tell them about 36 years of being useful, about the badge, about the restaurant, about sitting in my van with their silence still ringing around me. I wanted someone in that room to understand the difference between control and self-respect. But I caught myself. Iva wanted me arguing from pain. Pain can be made to look messy. Paper cannot. So I said only, "I signed because I was paying." Then I opened the folder. I placed the draft program on the table first. "The Vale family welcomes you to the wedding of Maribel Rourke and Rexford Vale." No one spoke. Next came the invoice. "Bill 2, Elgin Rourke." Then the production note. "Confirmed per Maribel and Mrs. Vale. Elgin Rourke, to remain payment. Vendor contact. Do not list as host." Maribel's face changed when she saw her name in that line. I placed the vendor contact badge beside the note. The little plastic card made almost no sound, but everyone looked at it. Then I laid out the contracts. Responsible party, Elgin Rourke. Signature, Elgin Rourke. I looked at Iva. "You are asking everyone to judge my motives. I am asking them to read your paperwork." Vance shifted by the counter. Rex said, "You're making this about money." I turned to him. "It became about money when my name stayed on every bill and disappeared from every family page." I looked at Maribel then. "Did you know about the note?" She opened her mouth, but no answer came fast enough. Iva stepped in. "That is standard planning language." "No," I said. "That was the part you forgot to delete." My mother covered her mouth. My father looked down at the table, and this time I did not try to rescue him from what he was feeling. I took the invoice and slid it toward Iva and Vance. Then I took a pen from my coat pocket and placed it across the top. "If the Vale family is hosting," I said, "sign as responsible party and pay the balance. Cody Harlan can hold the date until noon before it goes to the wait list." The room became so quiet I could hear the refrigerator motor kick on. Iva did not reach for the pen. Vance stared at it as if it were something unclean. Rex looked at his mother before he looked at Maribel. Maribel looked at the paper, then at me, and for the first time since this started, she seemed less afraid of losing the wedding than of understanding it. Vance finally said, "That is not how respectable families handle things." I looked at my parents, then back at him. "It was how you handled mine." No one moved. The pen sat there between them and the truth. I gathered the folder, leaving the copies on the table. I left the pen too. For most of my life, silence in that kitchen had made me smaller. That afternoon, it made the lie smaller instead. The wedding did not fall apart with shouting or broken glass. It fell apart in inboxes. By the end of that week, the wedding website was gone. The venue date had been released, and Iva Vale's perfect story had started disappearing one polite email at a time. Harlow Hall sent the first formal confirmation. Event date released. Refund processing pending. Cody Harlan called me afterward. Not to gossip, not to ask family questions, just to handle business the way decent people do. The date has been offered to the waitlist, he said. It looks like we may have a replacement event. That should help the refund schedule. Thank you, Cody. I'm sorry it came to this, Mr. Rourke. There it was again. Mr. Rourke. A simple name, spoken with more respect than my own family had managed at that table. The caterer acknowledged cancellation. The florist canceled the custom installation. The photographer released the weekend. Roxanne Bell sent a final professional email confirming the planning agreement had been terminated. No drama, no public scene, just subject lines, timestamps, and attachments. That was how the wedding collapsed. Not loudly, correctly. Iva Vale lost more than a venue. She lost the story. The society page announcement never ran. The custom Vale crest sign was never printed. The website language that said, hosted by the Vale family, vanished before most guests even saw it. At the country club, people started asking why the Lake Arthur wedding was no longer on the calendar. I heard that from Nadine, who heard it from Maribel, who had apparently heard Iva trying to explain it without explaining anything at all. There was no graceful way for Iva to say the man she called just the janitor was the one paying. No graceful way to say Vance refused to sign when the invoice was placed in front of him. No graceful way to admit their family name had been writing on my checkbook. Image needs silence to survive. Paper ended that silence. Maribel called several times during those first few days, but I did not rush to answer. I needed space from her voice. Not because I hated her. I did not. That would have been easier in some ways. I loved her, and love can make betrayal sit longer in the room. Her first messages were tight and frightened. Then, one afternoon, she left a different one. Elgin, she said, and there was no performance in it. I saw the note. That was all. I played it once and set the phone down. Later, Nadine told me Rex had said something to Iva in front of Maribel. All of this because the janitor got emotional. Maribel heard him. For once, she did not laugh it off. She did not smooth it over. She did not say he was stressed, or that Iva meant well. She heard the way they spoke about me when they were no longer trying to be polite, and I think something inside her finally turned toward the truth. The Vale family did not only look down on me, they looked down on the house she came from. My parents did not know how to talk to me after that kitchen meeting. My mother left one message saying, I didn't know it had gone that far. But she did. She knew enough when Iva said just the janitor. She knew enough when Maribel said nobody. She knew enough when she told me, not here, instead of telling my sister, not him. My father sent a shorter message. We should talk. I stared at those 3 words for a while. There was a time I would have driven over that same evening, sat at the kitchen table, and made their discomfort easier to carry. I did not do that. Not because I wanted to punish them. I was just done treating every silence in that family like a fire I had to put out with my own hands. Maribel finally reached me the following week. Her voice sounded smaller than it had in the restaurant. I don't know what happens now, she said. I stood in my office, looking out at one of our vans backing into the lot. What happens now is up to you, I said. But the money isn't going back into that wedding. She was quiet. Elgin, if we change the program, if we talk to another planner, maybe if Rex. No, I said. One word. Plain. Clean. No. Not for that wedding. Not with that family. Not after nobody. Her breath shook. I love you, Mari, I said. But I'll come to a wedding where I'm your brother. I won't pay for one where I'm nobody. That was not anger talking. It was the line I should have drawn long before Harlow Hall. The refunds came the way real money comes back. Slowly and through proper channels. Harlow Hall rebooked the date. Unearned deposits returned. Pending balances stopped. Not one more dollar of mine stayed tied to that wedding. I did not use the money to humiliate anyone. I did not buy a billboard or throw myself a party. I put part of it toward a newer van for one of my crews, and I started the Edwin Rourke Emergency Fund for night shift workers who get hit with medical bills, car repairs, or the kind of trouble that does not wait until payday. It felt right. That money had almost bought me a place in a room where I was being erased. Instead, it went back to people who knew the value of showing up before dawn and leaving things better than they found them. Several weeks later, I came into the office before sunrise. Wanda's crew was changing shifts. The coffee was burned, as usual. The new van keys sat on my desk, beside a stack of work orders. I opened my drawer and took out Edwin's old keyring. Building trust. At Harlow Hall, that tag had brushed against a badge that called me vendor contact. Now I hung the keys on the board where my crews could see them, not as a reminder of what people called us, as a reminder of what we kept standing. I will not pretend my family is fixed. Maribel may apologize properly one day, but guilt is not the same as repentance. My parents may want dinner again, but some tables need time before you can sit at them without remembering who stayed silent. Still, I am not bitter the way Iva tried to paint me. I am not lonely the way they use the word. I have work that matters. I have people who call me by my name. I have keys I earned, and doors I no longer beg to enter. Some doors close because people lock you out. Others close because, at last, you decide to keep the key.